Why would a lonely Dutch painter in a small room in France be obsessed with Japan? Why did Van Gogh, in the middle of his mental breakdowns, surround himself with cherry blossoms, geishas, and woodblock prints? Was it admiration, escape, or something deeper? In the late 1880s, Van Gogh was spiraling. He had moved to the south of France, chasing light, color, and peace. But his mind was anything but peaceful. And then he found Japan. Not by traveling, he never left Europe, but through the windows of ukiyo-e woodblock prints, those vibrant, flat, delicate artworks that had just begun flooding into Paris. To Van Gogh, Japanese art was more than beautiful. It was a lifeline, a world untouched by the chaos he lived in, simple, harmonious, balanced. He once wrote to his brother Theo, "All my work is founded on Japanese art." But what did he really mean by that? Okay, so Van Gogh didn't just like Japanese art. He was obsessed. But how far did that obsession go? Let's break it down. Van Gogh and his brother Theo collected over 400 Japanese woodblock prints. They filled their walls with them in Paris. Not fancy oil paintings, not European masters, prints from Japan, from artists like Hiroshige and Hokusai, names that were, at the time, barely known in the West. Question for the viewer: would you redecorate your whole home just to escape the chaos in your head? Because that's what Van Gogh did. He didn't just look at them, he transformed. Because of them. You know those bold outlines. Van Gogh loved to paint. The ultra-vibrant colors, the strange, tilted perspectives. That wasn't always his thing. That was Japan. He even copied some of his favorite Japanese prints, but not as a lazy tribute, as a study, as an attempt to become part of that world. He once said, "My whole work is based to some extent on Japanese art." But here's the twist. He never actually went to Japan. So, was he romanticizing something he didn't fully understand? Van Gogh's Japan wasn't real. It was a dream. The Japan Van Gogh loved wasn't Japan. It was a fantasy. A place of harmony, beauty, and peace. Everything his real life wasn't. In a letter, he described Japanese artists as cheerful and calm, as if they were monks in a monastery. Ironic, right? Because Van Gogh was not calm. He was restless, lonely, sick, in pain. Have you ever created a version of something? Not because it's real, but because you need it to be? It was a coping mechanism, not just a style choice. For Van Gogh, Japan became his version of therapy. Instead of meds or meditation apps, he had brushstrokes and woodblock prints. When he moved to Arles in the south of France, he told people he was starting his own Japanese studio. No, seriously. He called Arles the Japan of the South. Was it kind of delusional? Maybe. But it gave him hope, structure, beauty, a reason to keep painting when everything else was falling apart. And just when you think that was the most heartfelt twist, wait until you see what happened in his last year. Because the way Japan showed up in his final works, it's chillingly poetic. Stick around. What's coming next is quietly heartbreaking. How Japan taught Van Gogh to see and to dream. All right. We've seen how Van Gogh collected Japanese art. We've seen how he copied it. But now, here's the part people miss. He didn't just change what he painted. He changed how he saw the world. Artistic style. How Japan flipped his brain. Have you ever looked at something flat and felt depth, or looked at something simple and felt emotion? Yeah, that's ukiyo-e. Japanese woodblock prints weren't obsessed with realism. They didn't care about perfect shadows or perspective. They were like, here's a mountain. It's big. It's blue. Deal with it. Van Gogh loved that. He started using thick black outlines, wild color combinations, and flat planes of space, which honestly made no sense in Europe. But suddenly, the chaos in his head made sense on canvas. Nature and simplicity. Van Gogh. Anyone? Van Gogh didn't just admire Japanese style. He admired Japanese life. Imagine this. He's reading about monks, mountains, gardens, and peaceful tea rituals, while living in a cramped Paris apartment, surviving on bread, absinthe, and mental breakdowns. That's not exactly peaceful. So what does he do? He moves south to Arles, builds a yellow house, and says, "Let's make our own Japanese village, bro." The Brotherhood of Artists. Inspired by Buddhist monks? Here's a crazy detail. Van Gogh imagined a house where artists lived together, shared everything, worked in peace, and created beauty, like Buddhist monks. He wasn't joking. He even called it the Studio of the South, his personal Zen dojo. Too bad it ended in ear trauma. If you had to live in a house full of emotionally unstable artists, how long would you last? A. 2 months. B. 2 days. C. 2 minutes. But here's the twist. This wasn't just an art experiment. Van Gogh was trying to heal. Through nature, through community, through simplicity. And it all started with a print of a red bridge in Japan. And yet, as much as he dreamed of peace, his final works tell a different story. Because in his last paintings, Japan do, it brings haunting echoes. You're gonna want to see this. Stick around. The ending will leave a mark. At first, Van Gogh saw Japan as freedom, a land untouched by industrial smoke, by greed, by the noise of modern Europe. He dreamed of rice fields instead of train tracks, of cherry blossoms instead of city dust, of silence. But in the end, that dream didn't save him. It haunted him. The dream turns on him. In his last year, Van Gogh moved to Auvers-sur-Oise, a quiet town. Fresh air, new doctor, new hope. And yet, his mind was fraying. He painted over 70 works in just 2 months. Some were serene, fields, clouds, cottages. But look closer. The lines are tighter, the brushwork more frantic. The skies swirl like they're screaming. Even his Japanese elements, bold colors, flat planes, now feel more like a mask, like he's trying to remember a piece he can't feel anymore. Rain, the final homage. One of his last paintings was based on a Japanese print by Hiroshige, a rainy bridge scene. Van Gogh recreated it, but with thicker lines, heavier colors, and skies that look like they're pressing down on you. It's no longer a peaceful drizzle. It's a storm. This wasn't a copy. It was a cry. In letters to Theo, Van Gogh wrote about Japan until the very end. But now the tone had changed. He wasn't dreaming of starting a commune. He was wondering if peace had ever been real at all. He once believed he could become a Japanese monk through painting. But now, he was just alone, in a small room, with unfinished canvases, and silence louder than any storm. The ultimate irony. The very culture that once gave him lightness was now a mirror to his own despair. His dream of Japan never left him. It just changed colors, from gold to gray. So when you look at a Van Gogh painting, one with Japanese influence or not, ask yourself, is this beauty or is it survival? Is this color or a man trying to remember what joy looked like? And here's the part most people miss. Van Gogh never went to Japan, not even once. But in a way, Japan was the only place he ever truly felt free, even if it only existed in his mind.